This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Biden is set to hold a summit with African leaders as the U.S. moves to rebuild its influence on the continent. Hamas condemns Britain's move to ban it as a terrorist organization. And Ugandan forces confirm they've killed 5 suspected masterminds of Tuesday's terror attack in Kampala. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. With me in studio is Uche Okoronkwo with a preview of your business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Kenya's president urges African leaders to develop solutions to unlock the blue economy. And Tunisia's citrus harvest is down by 20% this season. Of course, all that coming up within the program for now.
Thanks, Uche. Well, in our top story this hour, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has announced that U.S. President Joe Biden plans to hold a summit with African leaders to show the U.S.'s commitment to the continent. During his speech on U.S. Africa policy in Abuja, Blinken said President Biden will hold the summit to drive high-level diplomacy and engagement. The Nigerian visit was part of Blinken's Africa tour, which ends in Senegal. Correspondent Phil Ihaza has more details.
Very heartily to this event.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says his visit reflects decades of U.S. partnerships in Nigeria.
The giant of Africa is an apt nickname for Nigeria because this country looms large. Your strengths are undeniable. A dynamic democracy, a robust economy, and a very powerful civil society. Challenges you face are undeniable as well, including the disruption and insecurity caused by terrorism and armed groups.
Other areas of interest for President Joe Biden's administration in Nigeria include health, climate change, economic growth, and democracy. This has led to a $2.1 billion fund approved by the U.S. government to support Nigeria's health, education, governance, and agricultural sector.
One of the cardinal mantra of this government is fighting corruption, and I think they need to go ahead and fight corruption headlong so that we continue to get confidence of these superpowers who will come and help us. Because if these monies are being given and they are not judiciously used, of course nobody will be interested in giving money to where it will be squandered.
Also, Nigeria has so far received over 7.5 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines directly from the U.S. But in a population of over 200 million, only 2.9% of citizens have received jabs.
As we work to end the COVID-19 pandemic and strengthen global health security, we must work closely with the countries of Africa to build public health systems here that can prevent, detect, and respond to future emergencies. Because as these past 2 years have taught us, none of us are completely protected unless all of us are protected.
Such promises could mark a stronger relationship between the U.S. and African countries like Nigeria. The hope is that the move to improve partnerships between the U.S. and nations across Africa would translate to better livelihood for millions of people on the continent. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, what do these statements by the U.S. Secretary of State portend for the African continent? Let's bring in Achike Chude, an African affairs expert, for some analysis. He joins us live now from Lagos. Achike, thank you for your time this evening. Now, U.S.-Africa relations took a turn for the worse under the previous administration, but it would appear that Blinken and Biden are trying to repair the damage, promising that the U.S. will do things differently, even when it comes to infrastructure deals in Africa. Do you think it's a matter of too little too late, considering how consistent and focused other countries have been when it comes to infrastructure in Africa?
Well, I think the United States left the party too early, and then others came in and then have been busy in Africa since then, and then they have gone very far in their engagement, with the African continent. Obviously, the question presupposes that the other nations that are presently engaged with Africa, would be sitting back while America now tries to rebuild its lost relationship with Africa. It's not going to happen because the competition for Africa, for Africa's resources, is exceedingly very high, and there are so many other competing nations outside of the United States, that are also involved. So they are not going to sit back and then allow America to the United States to come in and then take over what they have done over the years. So I think it is going to be a very difficult situation for Africa, unless they are going to bring something newer, something more meaningful to African continents, to eclipse what other nations are doing in Africa. I think it is going to be very difficult. I do not see them ever catching up with what other countries are doing, like China, India, for instance. It depends on what they have to put on the table, and I don't see anything meaningful for now.
Well, certainly this renewed interest in Africa coming from the United States might be good for the continent. How can then African countries position themselves to take advantage of President Biden's push to rebuild its influence in Africa?
Well, I think the major advantage that Africa has is that Africa has become the beautiful bride. Since there are so many suitors coming after Africa, so that would mean that Africa is in a position to give certain conditions about how she wants to engage with the rest of the world. So I think that is what I expect. What do the Americans have to offer? Is it better than what other countries have been offering in terms of loan, in terms of infrastructure, and other things that they have been doing within the African continent? And what are the conditionalities for these things they are going to give? Is it the same kind of conditionalities that make things difficult for the African continent, or they are going to be very flexible with these conditionalities? So it will depend. Of course, Africa continues to be a magnet for other countries in the world. The resources in Africa are just so much and needed everywhere. So I think Africa finds itself in a position to actually give some kind of condition to some of these countries if they want to deal with Africa, because it's easy if Africa gets its act right. They can play one country against the other to get the best out of the deal.
Certainly a very interesting chess game, perhaps with the board in Africa's favor. Thank you so much, Chike Chude, joining us there from Lagos. Now, the Palestinian Islamic resistance movement, known as Hamas, has condemned a decision by Britain's Interior Minister towards including it on the country's terrorist list. This came after Home Secretary Priti Patel banned the militant group from the UK. The move against Gaza's rulers brings the UK in line with the US and the EU. Hamas called on the British government to reverse the decision. Britain's Interior Ministry says the organisation will be banned under the Terrorism Act once passed into law. Patel is expected to present the changes to Parliament next week. A Hamas political official says Britain's move shows absolute bias towards the Israeli occupation and is a submission to Israeli blackmail and dictations. Well, let's go live now to Gaza, where we have correspondent Akram Al-Satari standing by for us. Akram, tell us more about Hamas's reaction to this move by Britain.
Well, ever since the news was circulating, the news about the statement that the British Minister of Order and Law prescribed Hamas, a political wing, as a terrorist organization, some officials from Hamas were posting some angry statements over the internet, while the movement itself issued a statement saying that the UK is committing yet another historical mistake, and the UK is using the chaos in the Arab land, in the Arab countries, for the sake of bypassing some of the very critical projects that are serving the best interest of the Zionist projects in the Arab land. And they are now slamming UK, and they were calling upon them to change the historical mistakes that were committed by Great Britain instead of committing more mistakes. And they were also reiterating that the resistance, that on the basis of which they are prescribed as a terrorist organization, they were reiterating that resistance is a granted right for the people according to the UN Convention, and that the Palestinians have been living in misery and under occupation for extended periods of time, and that this is about time to change that injustice and remove that injustice instead of making decisions to outlaw and designate as a terrorist organization the movement that is actually working towards the liberation of Palestine. Musa Abu Marzouk, who is known to be one of the Hamas officials who are engaging in foreign relation, not only with Arabs but also with some other countries, including some European actors, made a special statement. In that statement, he said that UK is committing a great mistake and is now by outlawing Hamas, and that they should withdraw and revoke that decision, and they should reconsider their position given the historical mistakes they committed against the Palestinian people. Also, Hamas has been acting with the Palestinian factions in Gaza. They are organizing a meeting tomorrow, and they are also organizing a press release following the meeting, and it looks like they have been coordinating their different stands to come up with a joint statement denouncing and refusing and asking the UK to change its position towards the people of Palestine. Tomorrow, 11:30, there will be a special press conference, and even before that, before the Palestinian factions convening, the Palestinian Front for the Liberation of Palestine made special statements in that they voiced their concern, their anger, and called for the UK to revoke that decision. So bottom line, all Palestinian factions are meeting and coordinating. The Palestinian Authority as well rejected that decision and called it a decision that would undermine and diminish the efforts to reunite the Palestinians, and it said that it is again a full bias with the Israeli pressures that have been practiced on the pro-UK government to prescribe Hamas as a terrorist organization.
Well, thank you very much for that thorough update. Akram Al-Satari joining us there from Gaza. Let's turn now to news from Sudan. Protests continued today in the capital, Khartoum. That's 2 days after mass demonstrations that saw 15 protesters killed. Different anti-military groups marched after Friday prayers, condemning what they called excessive use of force by police. Opponents of the military takeover in Sudan have vowed to step up protests. Meanwhile, internet services have partially returned in the country after a near total communications blackout for more than 3 weeks. Ugandan security forces confirm they've killed 5 allied Democratic Forces rebels suspected to have masterminded Tuesday's terror attack in the capital. The attack left 7 people dead, including 3 suicide bombers. 36 other people were injured, most of them police officers. ISIL have claimed responsibility for the 2 explosions in Kampala. Isabel Nakiria reports.
The Ugandan police say a Muslim cleric who was one of the most wanted terror suspects was among the 5 shot dead. Sheikh Chilevu is said to have been involved in recruiting young men into the ADF terror movement, and he is believed to have planned the terror attacks in the city. The Muslim cleric was killed at his home in Wakiso district, near the capital, Kampala. Police say he was shot after attempting to flee.
We are now intensifying the manhunt for Sheikh Suleiman in Subuga, who is one of the main actors behind the recruitment, training, radicalization. He's been providing material support and resources to the domestic terror cells.
The other 4 suspects were killed in Ntoroko district near the border with the DRC. Police say they were shot and killed as they tried to force their way through the checkpoints. So far, 21 suspects who police believe coordinated and financed the attack in Kampala are in custody.
The arrests were based on information that is given by the suspects earlier arrested. They provided very good accounts on how they were planning, preparing, and executing the bomb attacks, including the suicide bomb attacks.
Several raids have been carried out since the attack on Tuesday, and police say they've disrupted and dismantled a number of terror cells. Explosive devices are reported to have been recovered. The Ugandan army has sent a strong warning to all those involved in terrorism-related acts.
Once you resist or once you do anything that shows that you're a problem, they will definitely shoot at you. That is not in Uganda, that is world over.
Police say the group had been trafficking recruits to the DRC for training and radicalization onto the ADF terror ranks. The ADF is a rebel group based in the eastern DRC and is said to be having links to the militant group ISIL. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
The World Health Organization says that a shortage of at least 1 billion syringes could occur if manufacturing does not pick up due to an increased demand for syringes. The organization has further warned that a generation of children might miss scheduled immunization jabs unless manufacturers find a way to make more single-use disposable syringes available. It's a view that is supported by the United Nations Children's Fund. CGTN's Lindy Mtongana has more.
Increased demand, supply chain disruptions and syringe nationalism could lead to significant challenges in 2022 if there's no immediate action. That's according to UNICEF. The African continent has finally gotten the much-desired vaccines, but a new challenge is imminent: the shortage of syringes.
So at the beginning, we were counting on 70% of the population worldwide being vaccinated, but we know that this number now is increasing with now countries introducing a third dose, and as well as countries starting to vaccinate younger children. So there is a real risk of having shortages of syringes. Because where there's been a lot of effort to ramp up production of vaccines worldwide, this hasn't been done for syringes, for syringe production.
Auto-disabled syringes are those that can be disposed safely after vaccination without additional health protocol put in place to prevent reuse.
So these are the type of syringes that we use typically in developing countries for routine vaccination. So if we run out of those syringes, there is a serious risk that vaccination for children, routine vaccination for children, will be affected. And sadly with that, we have the risk of having deadly diseases for children reoccurring.
According to the World Health Organization, more than 6.8 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines are being administered globally per year. This is nearly double the number of routine inoculations delivered annually.
60% of those syringes in the world are produced in India and in China. So these two countries have also been severely affected by the COVID pandemic. So we are calling on governments as well as the private sector to ramp up production of syringes, but also diversify the production of syringes. So not only these two countries, but look at production lines possibly for Africa and in other countries.
UNICEF is concerned that if this situation is not urgently dealt with, there's a risk that COVID-19 campaigns will slow down and that will likely prolong the COVID-19 pandemic. Lindy Mtongana for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Austria is set to reimpose a full coronavirus lockdown as neighboring Germany announces a national emergency due to surging cases. Vienna introduced restrictions for the unvaccinated on Monday, but has since seen record infections. People are being asked to bunker down next week, with the entire population required to be vaccinated from February. Meanwhile, German Health Minister Jens Spahn told a news conference his country could face a similar fate. This follows a Thursday announcement by Chancellor Angela Merkel that public life in high-risk areas would be limited to those who have received the jab. Even more countries could yet follow this example, as Europe has again become the epicenter of the pandemic. You're watching Africa Live. We'll have more news after this short break.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The little tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas. So it's all begun now. divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front
clear
line.
view of this front line position.
Chinese President Xi Jinping chaired a symposium on Friday to mark 8 years since he announced the Belt and Road Initiative. The massive global program aims to increase infrastructure connectivity and many other types of cooperation. President Xi Jinping said it's a must to find the biggest common ground possible for all involved for the initiative to further develop. In what's been billed a major milestone for a far-reaching endeavor, Xi said the Belt and Road Initiative is set to take on an increasingly important role. CGTN's Sunye has more.
It's 8 years since Chinese President Xi Jinping proposed the Belt and Road Initiative. Commenting on the changes the initiative has created, the president said Friday that dialogue, cooperation, shared goals, shared work, and shared benefits among the parties involved have made concrete development possible and will continue to do so. By August 2021, more than 170 countries and international organizations had signed cooperation documents with China under this framework. And as of last year, China's trade with BRI partner countries exceeded $9.2 trillion, with China's total direct investment in these countries reaching nearly $140 billion. The BRI was announced the same year when Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the world to build a community of shared future for mankind, and the pandemic has highlighted the urgency of that call. Official figures show China has provided more than 1.7 billion vaccine doses to over 110 countries and international organizations, most of which are Belt and Road partners. Those who attended the symposium say the Belt and Road Initiative has long been far more than its infrastructure linkage.
I think President Xi Jinping's speech today has been visionary in laying down how high-quality BRI development could come about. By now, the initiative has brought economic corridors, railroads, ports, and other infrastructure. Meanwhile, connection and communication of policy, facility, investment, and financing, as well as people-to-people exchange, have greatly deepened.
Those who study the Belt and Road Initiative also say it has much more in store for the world.
I think some people in West, they use the Marshall Plan to compare BR. But now it seems that the BR is much larger than the Marshall Plan and much better than Marshall Plan too. BR is a global interconnectivity plan. More importantly, BR represents international public goods provided by China. And actually, this is a largest international public goods in the world history. Immediate or long term, BRI is to share China's development theory with the world.
Chinese officials promised this month that the BRI would not be a solo act and invited more countries and groups to get involved. Sun Ye, CGTN, Beijing.
Well, the Belt and Road Initiative, proposed in 2013 by Chinese President Xi Jinping, is drawn from the ancient Silk Road trade routes. The BRI aims to build trade and infrastructure networks linking Asia, Europe, Africa and beyond. CGTN's Robert Nagila takes a look at how the initiative is transforming Africa through major projects.
Among the Belt and Road Initiative projects already in operation in Africa are the Addis Ababa-Djibouti railway line linking Ethiopia and Djibouti, as well as Kenya's standard gauge railway line linking the capital Nairobi and the port city of Mombasa. Other projects include ports, airports, highways and dams across the continent. At present, China's signed BRI cooperation agreements with at least 44 African countries. But it appears that the Belt and Road Initiative hasn't settled the West. At the G7 summit in June this year, the United States proposed the Build Back Better World Initiative. It seeks to bridge the infrastructure deficit in developing countries. It also proposes to marshal private sector funding towards climate, health and health security, digital technology, as well as gender equity and equality. But China says the Belt and Road Initiative is building closer partnerships and ensuring unrestricted channels for trade and investment cooperation globally, and actively developing Silk Road e-commerce. It's also upgrading the African continent's infrastructure and speeding up its industrialization.
Meanwhile, the Chinese embassy in South Africa has hosted an online seminar on the 6th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee. The CPC Central Committee session was held in Beijing from November 8th to 11th. It attracted attention worldwide with the adoption of the resolution on the major achievements and historical experience of the party over the past century. Yoli Sanjamela has more.
The most important outcome of the 6th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee session is the adoption of the resolution on the major achievements and historical experience of the party of the past century. This resolution is the CPC's third historic resolution, and that's according to the Chinese ambassador to South Africa, Shen Zhuangdong.
It's in line with the party's two previous historical resolutions and also in line with new development of the times. The resolution will give a long way to inspire the whole party and make strides towards the bright future and towards our original goals.
Ambassador Shen was addressing his South African counterparts about the outcomes of the 6th plenary session of the 19th CPC Central Committee.
It's been over 2 decades now that South Africa and China have enjoyed good relations. Relations that have moved from partnership to strategic partnership and then comprehensive strategic partnership.
Under the joint leadership of the generations of leaders of our two countries, especially President Xi Jinping and President Ramaphosa, mutual political trust between our two countries have been deepened. Practical cooperation has continued to expand. People-to-people cooperation has been colorful, and international collaboration has become closer.
The South African government and its allies appreciate and support the Chinese government objectives.
Let us strengthen people-to-people exchange initiatives. This will encourage the emergence of structured yet organic everyday solutions within our communities and further engender popular exchanges and adaptations where developmental challenges are concerned.
The major achievements of the CPC, Comrade Ambassador, are very impressive. This includes the great success realized in overcoming feudalism, narrow nationalism, semi-colonialism, and bureaucratic capitalism, and in uniting the Chinese people in their massive ethnic diversity.
The seminar was co-hosted by the National Press Club of South Africa. Yudisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's go to Uche now for your latest business news.
Thank you, Lindy. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Kenya's president urges African leaders to develop solutions to unlock the blue economy. And Tunisia's citrus harvest is down by 20% this season.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Now, Now, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has called on African countries to develop smart solutions that will help to unlock the blue economy. Now, Kenyatta, who spoke in Mozambique at the second edition of the Growing Blue International Conference, said that the blue economy will create a ripple within African economies. Here's CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reporting.
The African Union Agenda 2063 recognizes the blue economy as a lever for economic growth, but human action has put the ocean systems under immense stress.
Oceans, as regulators of the climate and temperature, should be understood as a common heritage for the humanity, a critical element of continuity of human life, in addition to being the providers of food and livelihoods for millions of people.
Many African cities and coastal towns are still grappling with mountains of garbage, mostly plastic, that ends up in the ocean. The ocean plastic challenge is now rising through the food chain onto our dinner tables. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says it's critical for Africa to increase development financing towards sustainable ocean practices.
Indeed, as we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has left many of our economies devastated. Recovery efforts provide an opportunity to explore new growth paths as well as new strategies. And in this context, a critical question is how Africa can harness its rich marine resources to build back better in a post-COVID world.
Despite the huge potential the blue economy presents, Africa is yet to fully tap into the resources. The continent currently accounts for less than 7% of the global market for blue products. This figure, they say, could easily double in less than 10 years if countries took charge of oceans. The conference called for regional and global collaboration in developing a common position to tackle ocean-related threats. Daniel Arab Moy, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Meanwhile, the Kenya-China Chamber of Commerce has officially been launched in Nairobi with the aim of building long-lasting relationships with businesses and traders in both nations. Now, the launch of the non-profit organization is expected to accelerate bilateral trade between China and Kenya, which of course has been growing over the past decade. Here's CGTN's Nick Mudimba. He was at the launch of the chamber and filed this report.
Chinese and Kenyan traders have launched a Chamber of Commerce in Nairobi, seeking to connect their operations in the two countries into a lobbying machinery.
Cooperation between the Chinese and the Kenyan people, including through the promotion of cultural exchanges between our two countries. More specifically, our chamber aims to provide social and public services to strengthen our communities and bind us together. Facilitate exchange program between the two countries. Promote the well-being of the youth by creating employment opportunities.
The launch comes at a time when trade between the two countries has been growing. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Chinese exports to Kenya stood at $3.8 billion in 2018, up from $1.6 billion in 2007. Today, there are more than 400 Chinese businesses operating in Kenya, creating nearly 130,000 jobs for the local people. These companies have played an important role in accelerating advancement of the Big Four agenda, which is currently Kenya's development blueprint by Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta.
But my happiness while addressing you today is from the fact that organizations such as this one being launched today can be major contributors to the economic recovery by pointing clearly and consistently the positive elements which create an enabling environment for business to thrive.
Aside from strengthening exchanges, one of the biggest objectives of Kenya-China Chamber of Commerce is to bolster solidarity, promote mutual understanding, as well as cement people-to-people exchanges The aviation sector has also seen great strides between the two countries.
This has contributed to increased growth of the air cargo business at JKIO, which handled approximately 357,000 tons in the year 2020-21, making it the largest logistics hub in Africa for China.
With the Chamber of Commerce created, officials say it could be helpful in bringing exporters and importers closer, away from red tapes and business embargoes. Part of the agenda of the establishment is to connect Chinese companies and Kenyan startups to boost trade between the two countries. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
And heading to Nigeria now, small businesses in the country are struggling to survive months after reopening following closures due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, inflation and government restrictions to curb the spread of the coronavirus are affecting growth. Here's correspondent Tessem Akende reporting.
Margaret Kwajok operates a fast food restaurant in Jos in north-central Nigeria. She says she used to make a profit until the outbreak of the coronavirus, which triggered restrictions on public gatherings. Some of the restrictions have been relaxed, but she says business is still suffering, mainly thanks to inflation.
Just a couple of days, we bought a kilo of chicken for 1.4. After that, it became 1.5. Saturday was 1.6. Sunday was 1.7. So you can imagine. We're just trying to manage all of that, and if we can't manage, we have to increase the price. So it's not really a win for us. I would just say it's not a win for us. We're not finding it funny.
Margaret's experience is just one of many. Nigeria's inflation hit 16.6% in September this year, according to the nation's Bureau of Statistics. The World Bank attributes 42% of the overall job losses in Nigeria between 2020 and 2021 to the outbreak of the coronavirus disease.
The exchange rate has gone very high, and you know we are an importing nation, so that is going to affect the local market. And then for the small-scale businesses, when there's no demand, of course it is going to affect, like I said, employment.
Economic analysts say government support through credit and loans are needed to keep small-scale business owners afloat.
The government can still do more to help boost all the small-scale businesses so that they can access loans, so that they can, be able to invest into their business to expand it. I think that way it will also help employment.
The Nigerian government says it is committed to giving incentives to local businesses to enable them to survive. The nation's Trade and Investment Ministry says the government has earmarked nearly $200 million to support businesses impacted, especially by the coronavirus disease. About 1 million people are expected to benefit from the credit support. Margaret hopes she will be able to obtain a grant from the government. She says that will help her stay in business. Tessem Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
And in Tunisia, citrus harvests in the country have dropped by 20% this season. Authorities are blaming climate change, which has caused drought in citrus-growing regions. Now, according to data by Tunisia's Agriculture Ministry, citrus production dropped to 345,000 tons. That's against 440,000 tons harvested during the past season. Well, CGTN's Anin Shaushi reports from Tunis.
The supply of clementines to the Tunisian market started in earnest in mid-October. The director of fruit trees and vegetables at the Agriculture Department, however, says the country's decline in citrus production is estimated at 20% compared to the same period in 2020.
For the 2021-2022 season, we estimate the citrus harvest to be around 345,000 tons against 440,000 tons during the past season. The production is down around 20%. The governorate of Nabil accounts for 75% of national citrus production.
The decline in citrus crop affects mainly 3 varieties: Maltese minus 30%, Navel minus 25%, and Clementine minus 23%. Authorities in Tunis say climate change is disrupting citrus production in the North African state.
The main reasons for this decline are drought, lack of irrigation water in production areas, but especially climate change, which affected the citrus harvest. Citrus trees were hit by an unprecedented wave of heat during flowering and in the summer season. Hot weather continues to affect the fruits which do not reach maturity on time. However, we've recorded at least a 10% increase in the size of citrus fruits.
Tunisia exported 18,000 tons of citrus fruits in 2020. Export operations to the Gulf countries and Libya are underway for the current season. The export of citrus fruits to the French market will start in the first half of January 2022. Khaled Ben Shaban is a fruit merchant in the suburbs of the capital city Tunis. He says the instability of citrus production and supply, as well as export, have led to the price increase.
We are in the midst of the citrus season, but the usual quantities are not available in the market. When production goes down, prices inflate. This is not good for business. Consumers prefer a better harvest at an affordable price. The export of premium quality citrus affects the domestic market. Only the best citrus crop is exported.
The Directorate General of Agricultural Production says the harvest of sweet oranges stands at 17.1 thousand tons. Mandarin crop is stable at 5.6 thousand tons, while the other varieties of citrus fruit have recorded a 13.5% fall to 13,500 tons. Tunisian agronomists explain that citrus crop and agricultural production in the North African country are closely linked to climate and weather. The Agriculture Department has launched several producer to consumer selling spots in order to limit the intervention of intermediaries in the citrus distribution and marketing channels. Abdel Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
And to Algeria now. Dairy farms could help the country cut its huge import bill, but that's if the government's recent efforts to cut imports works. Now, the government spends about $1.3 billion a year on milk imports, but yet it is often unavailable in Algerian shops, reflecting wider problems with domestic food production and distribution. However, Algerian dairy cow breeders say the country can achieve self-sufficiency in milk. That's if they're provided with additional grasslands. With a total annual bill for imported foodstuffs of $19 billion, the government is now eager to increase domestic food production as it cautiously moves to reform parts of its largely state-run economy that has long been dominated by oil and gas.
Land must be given to dairy farmers in the highlands to invest and to enable them to provide milk to achieve self-sufficiency, because Algeria owns vast land. We can achieve self-sufficiency in milk production not within a year or two, but within 4 or 5 years. To increase the number of cows, we must provide more land, because each dairy cow needs at least 1 hectare. We have had the same number of dairy cows for 10 years. If we had more land, we could raise the number of cows. There is also a rise in the price of material.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but still to come on Global Business Africa, we'll be exploring what's behind the growing number of strikes in South Africa ahead of the festive season. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to Lindy.
Thanks, Uche. Well, let's take a short break. Your sports news up next. Coming up, World Athletics President Sebastian Coe is looking forward to the 2022 World Championships in Eugene, USA.
How would you create